This video is sponsored by Bug Replay, which records your browser along with things like debug logs and network traffic. Available as a Chrome extension or Firefox add-on, it facilitates communication between devs and non-devs and between companies and their end users. Network requests and response are synced with recordings, and it's just a great tool for any developer. Check out Bug Replay by clicking on the link in the description below. Hey, what's going on, guys? So I know that a lot of you really like the project videos where we build something from start to finish, and those are kind of the bread and butter videos of this channel. But today I want to do something different that may not be as fulfilling visually in the browser, but will really up your vanilla JavaScript game. So what I want to do is talk about some of the higher order array methods, as well as writing them in a shorter and more elegant way using Es6 Arrow Functions. So we'll be working with methods like map, filter, sort, reduce, and I'm sure a lot of you that are, I wouldn't say new to JavaScript, but a lot of you that don't really understand how these work have seen these quite a bit and are kind of confused by them. So hopefully this video can clear it up for you and you can see what they actually do. We're not going to do anything too advanced, but I will explain how they work and what the benefit is, and we'll actually compare them to like a for loop, which you would do back in the day. So learning these methods will really help you be a better programmer. I mean, you can do React and Angular tutorials and you can really master the framework, but you want to do stuff like this so that you really understand the language that's underneath those frameworks. Now, a lot of you guys know and have actually purchased the 21-hour course that I have on Udemy, Modern JavaScript from the Beginning, and we do talk about these methods, but not as much as I would have liked to. So I'll actually be adding some of this material as well as some new material that has to do with functional programming into that course. All right, so like I said, this isn't going to be like a project where we build something in the UI. We're just going to use the Google Chrome console for our output, but it's really going to up your programming game if you don't know about these methods. So if you want to follow along, all you have to do is create an index.html file and a main.js file. And the HTML file is very simple. It's just basic head body tags. I have an h1 and then a link to the main.js. And then in the main.js, we have two arrays. One's called companies, and it has just a bunch of objects with a name, a category, and a start and end date for that company. So they're basically companies that are done with. And then we just have a simple numbers array called ages. All right, so these are the methods we're going to look at. So forEach is basically just an easier way to, and a better way to loop through an array rather than using like a for loop. It doesn't return anything back to you like some of these other ones do, but it is a much nicer and more elegant way to loop through data. So the first thing I want to do is just do a standard for loop, just so we can compare what they look like. And I know a lot of you guys already know this stuff, but let's create a variable called I, set it to 0, and then we're going to say as long as I is less than companies, which is the array above, dot length, so as long as it's less than the number of companies in that array, and then we want to increment by 1 through each iteration, and let's just console log each company. So we'll say companies, and then we need to pluck out the current index with the variable I. So it starts at 0, each iteration it'll add 1 to I, and it'll print that out. So let's save and run, and you can see we get that in the console. Now, I'm using live server for VS Code. That's why when I saved, it just automatically loaded, so I don't have to keep reloading. All right, so that's a basic for loop. I know that most of you guys know this. So let's take a look at forEach. All right, so forEach, we can just take the actual array, so companies, and we can just say dot forEach. And then what that does is it takes in a callback function, okay? And this is synchronous. This is not an asynchronous callback. So this takes in, well, it can take in 3 different things. So we need basically like an iterator, something that we can use for each company or whatever is in the array. So I'm just going to call this company, but you can also get the index and you can also get the entire array. Okay, so those are the 3 things that can be passed in, and that's the same with most of these high order methods. So in here, we'll just go ahead and console.log, and let's just log company. All right, we'll comment out this for loop and save, and we get the same thing. Okay, so this looks a lot nicer than this. There's no setting I. There's no brackets with I. It's just, this is much nicer looking, much better. And if we wanted to get just like the name, we could just do company name, and there we go. All right, so very simple. I'm sure a lot of you guys already know about forEach. So let's move on to filter. So what filter does is it allows us to do just that, filter things out from the array. So let's say that we want to look at this ages array and we want to get all of the ages that are 21 and over. All right, now I'm going to first do this with a for loop. So we would define an empty array. We'll call it can drink because we want 21 and over, and we would set that to an empty array, and then we would do the for loop. So we would have to do, let me just move this down. We would have to define our I variable, let I equal 0, as long as I is less than ages.length, and then increment by 1. And then what we would do is take, well, first we would have to do an if statement, and we're going to say if ages I, so if the current iteration is greater than or equal to 21, then we would take that can drink, sorry about that banging, guys. We would take that can drink array and we would push onto it. We would add to it using .push, and we would pass in ages I, so whatever the current age, the current iteration is. All right, and then we could go down here, we could console.log the can drink array. Okay, so we'll go ahead and save that, and now we have an array of 21 and over. Okay, so you can see 12, 16, 5, these aren't in the array. So that's how we would do it with a for loop. So let's do this. Let's do the same thing with filter. So all we have to do is define a variable. Again, we'll call it can drink, and we can set it equal to ages.filter, and then this takes in a function just like the forEach did, and we're going to pass in, we'll call this age. Okay, and we can also get the index and stuff like that if we want. But then we just have to do our condition, which which will be if age is greater than or equal to 21, then all we have to do here is return true. Okay, there's no creating an array and then pushing onto it. We just simply do the condition and return true. So we'll go ahead and just comment this out and save, and you can see we get the same exact thing. All right, so this looks a lot nicer than this. Now we can even make this better. We can actually put this all into one line using Es6 Arrow Functions. So let's again create the can drink and set it to ages.filter. And inside here, instead of doing function like we did above, we're just going to put in the parameter of age, and we're going to set an arrow function and then put the condition, which is age is greater than or equal to 21. And that's it. That will work. So let's go ahead and just comment this out and save, and we get the same thing. All right, so we went from this ugly piece of code to this nice, elegant one-liner. All right, so if you are applying for a job or you're just showing someone your code, if you have this instead of this, then it's going to make you look like a better programmer. All right, so these methods are really important. You don't want to be doing things this way when we have this available. All right, so we're going to do a couple more examples of filter just in case it's still not registering. So let's go ahead and actually I'm going to put some comments in here. We'll say get 21 and older, just so it's clear what's going on, because I'm going to put this code in the description for you guys. This next one, let's go ahead and filter the retail companies. Okay, each company has a category, and we want to get just an array, or not an array, well, yes, an array, but we're not creating a new one like we would with map, which we'll get to, but we're just going to filter the ones out that are retail. So we'll create a variable called retail companies, and we'll set that to companies.filter. And then here, I'll go ahead and do the ES5 version first, and we'll pass in, these are companies, so I'll just call this company. Okay, and then we want to do our condition, and the condition is if company.category is equal to retail, then we simply want to return true. All right, so we'll go down here and let's just console log retail companies and save. And now we have 3 objects in our array, company 2, 4, and 9, and those all have the category of retail. All right, so what I want you to do now, if you want, of course, is pause the video and try to do this in the shorthand way using arrow functions. All right, see if you can do that, and then come back, and then we'll go ahead and do that. So we would just create, again, retail companies, set it to companies, if I can spell, companies dot filter, and then we would put in here the parameter company. Now the reason I'm not putting parentheses around this like this is because it's only one parameter. Okay, we can do this, and in fact if you had more than one here, like if we were getting the index as well, then we would have to have parentheses, but since we just have one parameter, we don't actually need these parentheses. All right, so then what we would do is the condition, which is company, I can't spell company for some reason, dot category equals, or is going to be equal to retail. All right, so let's comment this out and save, and we get the same thing. Okay, so let's do all the companies that started in the 80s. So you can see we have 81, we have 89. So we want to filter all of the companies from the 80s. Let's do that. So we'll go ahead and let's say get 80s companies, I don't know. And we'll create a variable, we'll call it companies, or we'll call it 80s companies, and we'll set it to companies. And if you guys want to pause it and try this on your own, feel free to do that. So we'll say filter, and I'm just going to do it the shorthand way right off the bat. So we'll say company, and what's our condition going to be? If we want from the start date, okay, remember they have a start and end, we want the start to be between 80 and 89. So we'll put a condition here that'll be, actually we want to wrap this in parentheses. So we're going to say company dot start is, let's see, we're going to say it's greater than or equal to 1980, and oh my god, I cannot spell company. I should have chose a different resource. So company.start is, we'll say, less than 1990. All right, so that should do it. It has to be greater than or equal to 1980 and less than 1990, and that should work. So let's go ahead and console log 80s companies and save. We get 5, and if we take a look here, we have 1, 4, 6, and 7, and 9. And if we look at the years, they're all in the 80s. All right, so let's do one more with filter. Let's get all the companies that lasted at least 10 years. Okay, so some of these guys lasted more, some lasted less than 10 years. For instance, 99 to 2007, 2011 to 2016. So some of these didn't last 10 years. So we want the ones that did. All right, so let's put a comment here. We'll say get companies that lasted 10 years or more. All right, so we'll say const, we'll say lasted 10 years. We'll set it to companies.filter. Okay, so company, and then what we want to do here is we want to wrap this in parentheses, and we'll say company.end. Okay, so we want to take the end date and we want to subtract, we want to subtract company.start. All right, and then in addition to that, we want to make sure that that is greater than 10. So that's how we could get it. So we'll say console.log lasted 10 years, and save. And now if we look at our array, so we have 81 to 23, 92. Oh, actually I wanted to do greater than or equal to 10 years because there is one that was 10 years. So yeah, company 7 was 86 to 96. So now that's included. All right, so I think that's enough with filter. You can see how elegant it is and how easy it is to just kind of pick out certain things from the array or certain values. In this case, company objects. But let's move on to map. All right, so map works a little bit differently. Instead of just filtering things out, we can create new arrays of anything really from a current array. So let's just grab all of the company names and put them into their own array. Okay, so we'll say create array of company names. All right, so we'll create a variable called company names. We'll set it to companies.map, and then all we have to do is pass in our company. This can also take index and the entire array. And actually, let's do it this way first. And you don't have to use arrow functions if you don't want. It's completely up to you. So company, and then down here, all we have to do is simply return company dot name. All right, we'll console log that. Not assert. And what we call it, company names, and save. And there we go. So now we just have a simple array with all the company names. All right, now we can do whatever we want with this. So I'm just going to copy this and comment it out. And I don't know, we'll just call this test. And then we could return like all ones if we wanted to for each item in the array. So if we log test, we just get an array of ones. All right, if we wanted to, let's call this test map actually. If we wanted to, let's say we wanted an array with the name and then the start to end year. So we could do return, you know what, let's actually use a template string here. So with ES6 template strings, this is the syntax for a variable. So we'll say company name, and then we'll just do some brackets, and in here we'll put the start to end date. So we could say company.start, and then we'll just do a dash, and then let's say company.end. So let's try that. And now we just have a simple array with each value is the name and then a set of brackets with the start to end date. So you can format it however you want. And then if we wanted to do this the shorthand way, we could go ahead and let's remove function. We'll remove the parentheses as well. So we'll say company, use an arrow function. We no longer need the return or the curly braces. So on this side, we'll get rid of these two as well, or just the curly braces and that semicolon, and that should work. So we'll go ahead and comment this out and save, and we get the same thing. Okay. So let's see, let's do one more example with map. Let's use the ages array. So what we'll do here is we'll take each one and we'll get the square root, or we'll square it. We'll just use the math object for that. So let's say const ages square, and we'll set that to ages dot map, and then in here we'll say age. We'll use an arrow and we'll just do math dot square root, or sqrt, and we'll pass in age, and that's it. So we'll console.log ages square and save, and there we go. Now we have an array of all of those numbers squared. If we wanted to do like, if we wanted to multiply each one by 2, we'll say ages times 2, and we could simply do age let's say age times 2, and save. Whoops, what did I do? Oh, forgot the parentheses. And there we go. So we're going to have each number times 2. And if we wanted to actually use 2 maps, let's say we wanted to square it and then times it by 2, we could get rid of this semicolon and then just go ahead and add another dot map. And when you do this, usually you would put these on separate lines like this to format it. So let's see what that gives us. Let's just call this I don't know, age map. And we'll change this to age map and save, see what we get. So what it did is it first squared all the numbers, and then it multiplied them by 2. And we could keep going like this, and we can manipulate our data. So map is very, very powerful. So now let's take a look at sort. Okay, so for sort, it works similar to the rest of these functions. We're going to create a variable, let's call it sorted companies. And what I want to do here is sort the companies by the start year, okay, from the earliest year to the latest. So we say equals companies dot sort, and sort will take in a function, and what we'll do here is, what we'll do here is we need to pass in 2 values. It basically takes 2, in this case 2 companies, and it'll compare them in a way however we want to. We're going to compare the start dates, and then we return either 1 or -1 to kind of move it up and down in the array. Okay, so for each iteration it'll take 2 companies and compare them. So we need, let's to make this even more understandable, we'll say company 1 and company 2, and then we just want to basically test the start date. So we'll say if C1 dot start is greater than C2 dot start, if that's true, then we want to actually return a 1. Okay, else then we want to return a -1. So that's how this works. You want to return 1 or -1 depending on your condition. So if we were to, let's see, why am I getting this? Oh, I forgot my closing parentheses. So let's console log now the sorted companies and save. And let's see, we still have our age map. Let's get rid of that. And if we look now and we check out the years, it starts at 81, and you see that it's actually sorted by the start date. All right, so to write this in a shorter form, we could say sorted companies equals companies dot sort. Now, a lot of times I use C1 and C2 up above, but a lot of times you'll see A and B. Okay, it's just kind of the standard. So we'll say A, B, and then let's do, we'll say A dot start. Sorry, I'm just kind of doing this off the top of my head. So we'll say A dot start is greater than B dot start. And then we need to do the return 1 or return -1. So what we'll do is we'll use a ternary operator. So with a ternary operator, we put a condition, and then if that's true, we put whatever we want to happen here, which I'm just going to return a 1. Else, we use a colon for else, we want to return a -1, not a -a, a -1. All right, and then I'm going to just go ahead and comment this out, and let's hope that that works. So we'll look at the date, and there we go. So that's an easier way to write this. Let me just put a comment saying what we're doing. Sort companies by start year. All right, so hopefully that's helpful, guys. Let's do one more with sort. Let's sort ages. So we just have a simple numbers array. We want to sort that from, lowest to highest. So I'm going to say const sort ages, and we're going to set this to ages.sort. And I want to show you what happens if we just do this. So let's do console log sort ages and save. And if we look at this, it looks like it works right away, right? Until we get to a single number, or a single digit number like 5. And what it's doing is it's basically just looking at the first number. So to fix this, we need to, again, pass in A and B, or whatever you want to call it. And then we just simply need to say A minus B and save, and now you'll see 5 is at the beginning. If you wanted this in descending order, then you could just do B minus A. Sorry about the yelling upstairs. And now you can see that 5 is at the end. All right, so that's that. So let's talk about reduce a little bit. Now reduce is, I mean, it can be used for a lot of things, and it can get quite complicated. We're going to keep it simple, and we're going to use it to, let's add all of the ages together. So we have this ages array with all the numbers. Let's add these all together. And I'm first going to do that with a for loop, just so you can kind of see the difference. All right, so what we'd have to do is first just create a variable. We'll call it age sum, set it to 0, and then we'd have to do our for loop, which by itself is just a pain in the ass. So let I equals 0. I is, as long as I is less than ages dot length, and then I plus plus. And then what we would do is take age sum, the variable we just created, and we would just kind of append to plus equals whatever that iteration is. So age is I. Oops. All right, and then we could console.log, what is it, age sum, and we get 460. So that's all of those added together. All right, so let's do this with reduce. So we would just create a variable called age sum, and we'll set that to ages dot reduce, and then in here we'll put a function. And let's say age, actually I'm sorry, with reduce we need to do total and then age, and then oops, we'll go down here and we'll just return total plus age. All right, and it's also going to take in a second parameter of the total, which is going to be 0. Okay, it's going to start at 0. So let's take this and comment this out and save, and we still get 460. Now this is kind of long. It's actually just as long or longer than the for loop. So to shorten this up, we'd use an arrow function. So we'll go ahead and take away the function. We'll add our arrow, and let's get rid of the return and the curly brace. And we'll go over here, get rid of the curly brace and this semicolon, and that should do it as well. So we'll comment this out, save, and we still get 460. All right, so this is a much more elegant way than doing it this way. So let's do another example with reduce. Let's get the total years for all companies. So the range for each company, will add all of those up. So get total years for all companies. So we'll say const, we'll call this total years, and we're going to set this to companies dot reduce. Here we'll put company, and then what we'll do is just return, I'm sorry, this should get total and company. I always forget that. So total and company, and then we want to return total plus, and in parentheses we're going to do the company dot end minus the company dot start. Okay, and if we do just that, let's go ahead and console log total years. If we do just that, we get this weird looking thing. That's because we forgot the 0. Remember, we have to add that second parameter of 0. Okay, and now we get 118. And just to test it out, if I go up here and I add an extra year to, let's say this top one, we'll say 2004, to save it, we should get 119. All right, so it's taking the length of time for each company and adding them all together. So to do this in a shorter way, using arrow functions, and if you want to pause it and try this out yourself and see if you get it right, then that's a great way to learn. But what we would do is get rid of the function. We would add our arrow. We'll get rid of the return and that. Get rid of that and that. All right, and we'll comment this out and save, and we get 119 still. All right, so that is forEach, map, filter, reduce, and sort. Now you can use any of these together to do certain things. So I'm going to give you an example. It's not really the most practical example, but let's combine methods. So what we'll do is we'll create a variable called, we'll just call it combined, and we're going to set it to ages. And let's first do, let's first do map. So I want to times them all by 2, all the ages. So we'll say age, we'll use an arrow, and we'll say age, and then multiply that by 2. So that on its own, let me just put this on a new line, that on its own is going to give us an array of all the ages times 2. Let me just console.log combined so we can see this kind of morph. All right, so we have all the ages times 2. You know what, let me actually comment out some of this other stuff because they're getting sorted. Get rid of that. All right, so we'll save that. All right, so now we just have an unsorted array of all the ages. Now let's say next we want to filter anything that's 40 and over. Okay, and I'm doing 40 because we multiplied everything. So to do that, we'll use a filter, and we'll say age, and we'll say any age that is greater than or equal to 40. All right, so let's look at that, and now that filtered out anything that was under 40. Let's do a sort, and we'll sort them from lowest to highest. So we want to pass in our A/B values, and then just do A minus B. Save that. Now they're sorted, and now let's use reduce to add them all together. So we'll say dot reduce, and we'll pass in our AB, and we'll just say A plus B, and then add our 0 value for the total. And let's save that, and we get 798. All right, so you can see we've used all 4 methods here to manipulate our data. All right, so that's going to be it, guys. What I would suggest for you is to maybe create your own data set and try to, pluck things out, manipulate it, create new arrays from your array, sort things, and just try to do some things on your own, because you're only going to learn so much from watching tutorials or even following along with tutorials. You want to experiment with your own things. All right, maybe even use some kind of external API, pull in the data, and see what you can do with it, see what you can create with it using these higher order functions. All right, so that's it. If you guys like this video, please leave a like. If you're not subscribed and you like this type of video, please do so. Hit that subscribe button, and that's it. Thanks for watching. This video is sponsored by Bug Replay, which is a fantastic tool that records your browser along with JavaScript logs, network traffic, and other data. Get it as a Chrome extension or as a Firefox add-on. Easily display HTTP requests alongside WebSocket data. On top of that, easily view all your environmental data like the browser, the OS, geographic location, system memory, cookie information, and much more. Bug Replay also integrates easily with Slack and GitHub. It supports unlimited users, and it's a great tool for developers. I highly recommend it. Check out Bug Replay and more of its features by clicking the link in the description below.